Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are jumping into, well, a true cornerstone of modern cultural and musical history today, tackling a resource that is, frankly, monumental in its scope and authority.
It really is.
We're talking about the 25th anniversary reissue of the Beatles Anthology.
Yeah, it's quite the stack of material we've got here, and for good reason. This isn't just, a simple reprint.
No.
This is the re-release of a massive international bestseller, and the timing. It's perfectly aligned with this global resurgence of interest in the band.
Right.
So for you, the listener, maybe wanting to quickly and thoroughly grasp the definitive story of, well, arguably the most important band in history, this collection, this material, it's structured to be the ultimate shortcut, but still really detailed.
Absolutely. And our mission today is pretty laser focused, wouldn't you say? We want to extract why this anthology reissue is so relevant right now.
Mm-hmm.
What specific, unique information does it actually provide that you just can't find compiled with this kind of authority anywhere else?
That's the key question.
And, how does its structure manage to chronicle that entire journey? We're talking 4 decades from those struggling, rough Liverpool days.
Yeah, at the very beginning.
Right through Beatlemania, global artistic innovation, and then eventually the breakup itself.
And that distinction you mentioned, definitive and authorized, that's not just marketing speak.
No, it feels much more significant here.
It absolutely is. It's what elevates this book from just another biography into, well, practically a primary historical document. We are dealing with the sanctioned history, and that really changes how you read every single memory, every fact inside.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Because when you look at the Beatles, the world is just saturated with books claiming to have the real story.
Oh, hundreds. Thousands, probably.
You've got biographies, academic stuff, memoirs from people on the fringes, deep dives into specific albums. So what makes this specific story unique? What gives it a weight, an authority that all those others just lack?
It all comes down to the core claim, really. The source material is clear. This is the only story of the Beatles by the Beatles.
By the Beatles themselves?
Exactly. The crucial difference is ownership. The original book, its creation, had the complete support, the full cooperation of Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr.
The surviving members at the time.
Right. And, very significantly, Yoko Ono Lennon.
Oh, okay.
This isn't someone else interpreting their lives from the outside. This is their collective memory, compiled and presented.
That level of official sanction, it fundamentally shifts the dynamic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests a narrative that maybe isn't filtered through an outside historian trying to figure out conflicting memories decades later.
Yeah.
It's the band or, their representatives presenting their own carefully considered collective account.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't there maybe a danger there?
How so?
Well, because it is authorized by Yoko and the surviving members.
Mm.
Might some of the sharper edges get filed down a bit?
Yeah.
The legal fights, the internal bitterness, the really messy details in the breakup?
It's a fair question.
Does the book truly present the story, warts and all, or is it, inevitably a bit of an exercise in legacy management?
That is the exact tension you always find in any authorized history, isn't it? And it's a vital question for any critical learner, anyone listening, to ask.
Mm-hmm.
However, the format itself, this oral history style, we'll get into it, actually works against too much smoothing over.
How does it do that?
Well, by putting the distinct voices of Paul, George, and Ringo right next to each other on the page, side by side, the editors actually let you, the reader, spot the friction.
You see the inconsistency.
You see the memory gaps, maybe the different priorities that, ultimately led to the breakup. It's the approach they took that lends it integrity, I think, even if the final presentation is obviously curated.
Yeah.
They commit to showing you those differing viewpoints.
That makes sense. So the raw presentation of potentially conflicting memories is the warts and all element, in a way.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, let's focus on the voices themselves. Obviously, Paul, George, and Ringo contributed their fresh memories and recollections directly for the original project.
Right, back in the 90s.
But the critical task, surely, in creating a definitive 4-voice history is making sure John Lennon's presence is felt authentically. How did the authors handle his voice? How do they make sure it wasn't just, a few token quotes everyone's heard before?
This is where the source material really highlights how meticulous the project was. John Lennon's words, it says, were painstakingly compiled from sources worldwide.
Painstakingly compiled. That sounds like a massive job.
It absolutely does. It suggests this wasn't just relying on the 5 or 6 famous quotes everyone knows.
No.
This implies a really deep archival dive. Every available primary source from John's lifetime they could get their hands on. We're probably talking late period interviews, maybe even unseen letters, possibly excerpts from private diaries,
Well,
and meticulous cross-referencing, checking his views expressed in post-Beatles songs or those big interviews he did with like Rolling Stone or Playboy.
so the insight here is that the compilation wasn't just about having him present, but about authentic representation across all the stages of his life.
Yeah.
Especially maybe the post-Beatles period, to give context to how he felt later about the Beatle years.
Exactly. I think the aim was to integrate his voice really robustly so that all four members feel genuinely engaged throughout the entire history.
Okay.
And we absolutely cannot overlook the power of that official support, particularly Yoko Ono Lennon's backing.
You mentioned her crucial role.
Her involvement is the key sanction, really. It validates this as the definitive record of John's experience within the band, too. It provides the legal, the emotional, the cultural clearance needed to produce this comprehensive, unparalleled account. Without her participation,
The definitive claim just falls apart.
immediately.
Her support sort of ties the past and the present together, doesn't it? Ensuring the legacy is presented cohesively. It transforms the book from maybe just biography into a fully authorized primary source document endorsed by the entire estate.
Precisely. And the timing of this 25th anniversary reissue, it really elevates it. It's not just a niche literary event. It becomes this globally coordinated cultural moment.
Right, it's tied to that global co-release.
Yeah,
That synergy feels huge.
it is huge.
Let's talk about that synergy then, because there's clearly a calculated coordination happening here. When you look at all the elements surrounding this reissue, you've got the anniversary book as the anchor, the big Disney Plus documentary series,
Right, get back in the subsequent waves.
and the restored, expanded music collections that keep coming out. What's the strategic benefit of dropping all three, essentially, simultaneously?
Well, it achieves a few critical things, I think. Firstly, it standardizes the narrative.
Standardizes. How so?
By controlling the official historical account, that's the book, and the official visual account, the documentary, which often uses similar footage and structure, and the official audio presentation, the pristine, newly mixed music, they ensure that the story a new generation receives is the authorized story.
Without cutting through the noise.
Exactly, free from all those conflicting, non-sanctioned versions that just proliferate online these days.
So if you're a learner, someone listening who's trying to catch up on the Beatles, this coordinated drop means you get the official narrative in the book, you get the deep visual immersion through the documentary on a huge platform like Disney Plus now,
Very accessible.
and you get the pristine, maybe even remixed audio experience, all hitting you at roughly the same time. It's like an immersion ecosystem.
That's a great way to put it. It maximizes the cultural impact and minimizes the historical clutter, The original anthology project back in the mid-90s was a phenomenon, absolutely.
Huge. I remember it well.
But it was largely pre-streaming, pre-internet as we know it now. This new release campaign is built for the way we consume media today.
Right.
The focus isn't just on existing fans, the older generation. It's clearly aimed at reintroducing the story to Gen Z, younger millennials, who consume media on demand. They're leveraging the weight of these high-profile platforms like Disney Plus to guarantee visibility. So it frames the book as essential reading for anyone engaging with this whole synchronized experience. It cements their legacy not as some dusty historical footnote, but within a modern pop culture context.
And the economic synergy must be fascinating, too. Each product drives sales and viewership to the others, right?
Absolutely. Watch the documentary, buy the book, stream the album. It's a very neat circle.
That is a sophisticated piece of legacy management. It feels less about simple nostalgia and more about cementing their status as this enduring contemporary cultural force.
I think that's exactly right.
So the authority is settled. This is their definitive version presented with their cooperation. But holding together 4 decades of history, 4 different, sometimes, let's face it, conflicting viewpoints,
Yeah.
that must have been a structural nightmare for the editors.
Oh, I imagine so.
How do they tame that chaos? The source material keeps emphasizing this innovative oral history format. What does that actually mean in practice?
That format is the key to taming the chaos. It's not a traditional narrative, controlled by one single authorial voice.
No omniscient narrator.
Right. It's more like a mosaic, built from spoken recollections. This format, it masterfully weaves together the Beatles' direct accounts their memories with these essential contextual contributions from close associates, people like their producers, their road managers.
Okay, the supporting cast.
Exactly.
And this structural choice, it seems like it directly addresses the needs of, our learner persona, the listener trying to absorb this quickly. Instead of reading some dry academic analysis of an event,
Right.
you get Ringo's memory, then maybe Paul's memory right after, and then perhaps George Martin's professional context on that exact same event.
Precisely.
It makes the information feel much more digestible, highly relatable, because you're hearing the voices directly. It creates this sense of immediate intimacy.
It absolutely prevents the information from becoming dry or academic. You're not reading an analysis of history. You feel like you're listening to the people who lived it, debating it, reminiscing about it right there.
Yeah.
And the style feels fast-paced because the voices keep shifting, which keeps you engaged. And crucially, like you said, it offers those immediate contrasting perspectives, which really aids comprehension. You see the different angles.
Okay, let's use an example maybe to clarify this. Let's say the discussion turns to their first meeting with Brian Epstein.
Okay, a pivotal moment.
The man who became their manager shaped their image. A traditional biography would just describe the meeting chronologically, right? How does the oral history format handle something like that differently?
Well, it transforms that single moment into this multi-sided memory. So you might first read Paul's recollection, and maybe he focuses on how professional Epstein looked, how sharp in his suit,
Right, the impression he made.
and how desperately they needed someone, anyone, to handle the business side. Then, immediately following that, you might get Ringo's memory. And perhaps Ringo focuses on Epstein's initially stiff demeanor, or maybe how skeptical he was that this posh guy could actually manage a rock band.
Different takes on the same encounter.
Exactly. And then George might weigh in, maybe giving a more cynical assessment of the early business arrangements, even from the start.
So that sequential presentation, one after the other, allows you, the reader, to immediately compare and contrast their subjective experiences of the exact same moment. It highlights the differences in priority or memory or just the emotional impact it had on each of them. It gives us a far richer, more nuanced understanding of their internal band dynamics at any given time. That structural detail is actually a commentary on their relationships.
I think that's a great way to look at it. And to structure all that input, they obviously needed a rigid backbone. The source confirms the content is arranged by year.
Chronologically.
Yes, providing a complete, orderly history. And that chronological logic must be absolutely essential for making sense of the sheer chaos that was Beatlemania and their incredibly rapid evolution.
That chronological flow gives the whole narrative coherence, right? It tracks their exponential acceleration.
Yeah.
But let's map out the full narrative arc this structure covers.
Yeah,
Because it seems like a complete life story, not just the famous bits.
definitely.
The scope starts right at the beginning. Growing up in Liverpool, those first rough gigs.
It really has to start there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To ground the global phenomenon that followed, we need to see the ordinary boys before they became, world changers.
Yeah.
And the source material emphasizes those first rough gigs. That means detailing the grime of the early venues, the Cavern Club, the grueling hours they played in places like Hamburg,
Hamburg days.
in the red light district, the sheer volume of time they spent just honing their craft, playing covers before fame ever hit. It shows the humility, the apprenticeship that came before the global conquest.
And then the structure takes us through the phenomenon of their rise to fame. This is the Beatlemania era.
Right.
And that year-by-year structure must really pay off here, tracking the incredible speed at which their careers just exploded from regional favorites to international icons in what felt like months.
Oh, absolutely. And this section would use that multi-voice format perfectly to capture the sheer psychological stress of that period. Paul might focus on the creative demands, churning out hits. Ringo might reflect on the impossibility of even being heard over the screaming crowds. And George might articulate some of that initial disillusionment, maybe, with the limitations of being just pop idols.
And then you move into the peak, the musical and social change of their heyday. This is where the band really shifted, didn't they? From being pop idols to becoming genuine artistic innovators, influencing everything fashion, philosophy, global culture. We're talking mid to late 60s here.
That shift is huge. The book has to detail how they went from performing, simple love songs to exploring these incredibly complex, often psychedelic studio compositions. And the social change element, too, that would cover their embrace of counterculture, their explorations of Eastern spirituality, like the whole period with the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and their growing political awareness. even if they tried to downplay it sometimes. The book has to capture how they transitioned from just reflecting youth culture to actively driving societal shifts.
And finally, the book has to handle the inevitable decline, doesn't it? The ultimate breakup. By using this oral history format, that conclusion gets handled by the participants themselves, rather than through, external judgment or some historian's retrospective analysis.
And that lends the ending real poignancy, I think. Authenticity. The final years were messy legal disputes, internal sniping, failed business ventures like Apple Corps.
Yeah, the Apple story is complex.
By having them speak about it in their own words, we get a better understanding of the emotional devastation, maybe, of realizing this once-in-a-lifetime partnership was just finished, irrevocably. The structure covers the entire life cycle, making it a truly complete and arguably internally honest history.
Okay, so we've got the authority, the structure. But a book of this historical magnitude, this personal intimacy, it needs more than just words, right? It needs that visual dimension to really bring the history to life.
Absolutely.
The source material is very specific about the visual richness. It says the book is brimming with over 1,300 images, documents, memorabilia.
1,300.
That number is just staggering. It implies almost unlimited access.
That volume is almost overwhelming, but it just illustrates the unparalleled access they must have had precisely because of the band's official support.
Right.
We're talking about a visual archive that few, if any, non-authorized books could ever hope to muster. And what's fascinating here, as the source notes, is not just the quantity, but the provenance of these images. Where did they come from?
Yeah.
The vast majority are previously unpublished, pulled directly from Paul, George, Ringo, and Yoko Ono Lennon's personal archives.
Wow. That is the definition of the ultimate insider perspective. These aren't just the publicly available press photos of waving at airports or whatever. These must be personal moments. Maybe rehearsal shots, candid downtime photos between takes.
Handwritten lyric notes.
Original design sketches for album covers, maybe. Or even just doodles from studio sessions. It adds this layer of intimacy that must completely transform the reading experience.
It transforms the history into something almost tactile, a private experience. You feel like you're seeing the history as they preserved it themselves, capturing those unguarded moments that maybe reveal character, relationship dynamics, more clearly than any formal portrait ever could.
Yeah.
Imagine the insight you might glean from seeing, say, Ringo's private holiday snapshots right next to Paul's handwritten notation for a new chord progression he was working on.
That cross-pollination.
Yeah, that mix of personal artifacts tells a story about their private reality during times of just intense public scrutiny.
And in addition to the personal archives, the book also includes memorabilia from important corporate sources like Apple and EMI and other Beatles associates.
Yeah.
So that combination, personal and professional archives, it creates this truly comprehensive visual record, doesn't it? It links the four friends to the global business machine they became.
That linkage is essential. The band members tell the emotional story, the personal journey. But the supporting players and those corporate documents, they provide the vital context, the professional ballast, if you like, that helps explain how four musicians from Liverpool became the world's biggest phenomenon.
So beyond the core four, the sources highlight that crucial context is provided by specific supporting players. These individuals must be essential for connecting the intimate personal stories of the band members to the logistical and creative machinery that sustained them.
They are absolutely vital. Let's talk about those specific roles mentioned and why their voices in this oral history are so indispensable. First up, Neil Aspinall, the road manager.
Right. Started as a school friend, didn't he? Became a roadie and eventually ended up as the CEO of Apple Corps. Quite a journey.
Incredible journey. He was their constant companion, the man handling the logistics. Literally everything from hauling their equipment during those early rough gigs in Liverpool.
Back to Ringo on the bus.
Exactly. All the way up to managing their incredibly complex global operations in the late 60s.
So his perspective grounds the story in the day-to-day reality of being the Beatles, especially that pre-fame chaos.
Totally. He could provide stories of, logistical disasters, van breakdowns on the way to a show, dealing with angry club owners who hadn't been paid, stuff that adds necessary grit to the narrative. His memories bridge that huge gap from the Cavern Club days right up to the boardroom battles of the early 70s. He saw the whole arc from the bottom up.
And then, of course, there's the iconic producer George Martin, often called the fifth Beatle, certainly in the studio.
Yeah.
The sonic architect who somehow translated their most ambitious, sometimes completely abstract ideas into recorded reality.
His voice is just indispensable for understanding that musical change of their heyday. Martin's contributions would detail the technical and creative context for their massive musical evolution. Think about albums like Revolver or Sweet Pepper.
Game changers.
He could explain the 40 hours they might have spent painstakingly recording and splicing together tapes for a song like Strawberry Fields Forever, detailing his technical headache, trying to merge two different versions recorded at different speeds and keys.
Wow.
He explains the why behind those revolutionary sounds, offering insights that really only the person sitting at the mixing desk could possibly provide.
That level of technical detail is the gold nugget, isn't it? That's what makes the history really stick.
Yeah.
And finally, the source mentioned spokesman Derek Taylor.
Yes, Derek Taylor. He was crucial for handling the press, managing their public narrative, especially during the absolute height of Beatlemania and then later during periods of intense controversy.
Right.
He was a master of public relations, really, tasked with dealing with the fallout from huge events like John Lennon's infamous "more popular than Jesus" comment in 1966.
That was a global media firestorm, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Especially in the U.S.
Huge. Taylor's perspective would offer that critical behind-the-scenes context on how the band's decisions, their controversial statements, were internally managed and then communicated to a global public that was often hostile or just confused by their rapid changes.
So he provides the external view.
Exactly. He connects the internal personal chaos and the creative brilliance to the massive public relations machine they had to operate. So these three contributors, Aspinall, the logistics man, Martin, the studio master, and Taylor, the media handler, they provide the necessary critical mass to turn personal memory into proper professional history. It makes the archival content both deeply intimate and professionally contextualized.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. As you've noted, the book isn't just a dry chronological record. The source material emphasizes its tone.
Yeah.
It aims to be warm, frank, funny, poignant, and bold.
Quite a mix.
It achieves that emotional resonance, it seems, by focusing on specific, really illustrative anecdotes that reveal character and context.
Yes, these narrative hooks are absolutely essential for making the history stick in the mind of the learner, the listener. They use these specific moments to illustrate the immense range of their journey, often juxtaposing the mundane, ordinary early life against the sheer impossibility of their peak fame. It's that contrast that provides so much of the humor and the poignancy.
And the perfect example, mentioned right in the source, of that early, struggling, often humorous start is the story of Ringo trying to take his drum kit home on the bus.
Chuckles, yeah.
Tell us more about why that particular anecdote works so well. Why include that?
Well, that image is just incredibly evocative, isn't it? And immediately humanizing.
Absolutely.
It captures the sheer effort, the logistical headache, and the absolute ordinariness of their existence before they were insulated by limos and road crews and security. You can just picture young Ringo, maybe a little wet from the Liverpool rain, grappling with this massive bass drum and snare case, trying to somehow squeeze it onto a crowded double-decker bus. The conductor's probably exasperated.
Rolling his eyes.
The other passengers are annoyed, and Ringo is just trying to save the tiny amount of cash a taxi would have cost back then.
That one moment reminds you they were just working-class musicians hauling their own gear, infused with that grit and resilience, which makes their later, almost unimaginable success feel even more incredible. It grounds the whole story.
Absolutely. And then you contrast that humility, that image, with one of the specific milestone moments of their global success mentioned, their much-anticipated audience with Elvis.
Right. That's the absolute peak of the mountain, isn't it?
Yeah.
The moment when the Beatles must have realized they hadn't just conquered the world, but they were now actually peers with their own childhood hero, the king of rock and roll himself.
Exactly. And the book's oral history approach apparently allows us to see the awkwardness of that meeting, which makes it even more powerful and relatable, funnily enough.
Awkward. How so?
Well, Elvis, kind of sequestered in his mansion by then, was maybe a bit unsure how to interact with these four loud, witty, slightly psychedelic upstarts who had, let's face it, basically usurped his global throne.
Yeah, the dynamic must have been strange.
So the anecdote probably captures their nervousness too, the slightly forced small talk, but also the immense cultural weight of that encounter. Two musical monarchies meeting face to face for the first and only time. That anecdote signifies not just success, but a massive seismic cultural shift.
Okay, so we see the beginning and the peak. The book must also explore the creative process itself, marking those major evolutions. The source material highlights the detailed story of the making of the Sandpepper album.
Right, and Stamp Pepper, it wasn't just another album, was it? It was their conscious decision to stop touring altogether and use the studio itself as their instrument, as a laboratory.
A huge risk at the time.
Massive. So the deep dive into its creation represents their absolute peak of studio innovation and musical change. The oral history format would detail the tension of those endless nights in Abbey Road, the pressure of expectations after Revolver, and the truly radical techniques they were pioneering, using orchestral scores in pop, reversing tapes, creating complex sound collages.
That chapter, then, driven by the members' own recollections and crucially supported by George Martin's technical context, would show the sheer ambition and the radical break from their touring past.
Yeah.
It's the story of music as laboratory, showing how they completely redefined the concept of the album, turning it into a cohesive piece of art.
Exactly. And then, inevitably, you need the conclusion. To provide that necessary emotional closure, the source material points to their last photo session together at John's house.
That single image, or maybe just the recollection of that day, it serves as the perfect kind of narrative conclusion for the book, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's the final, maybe unspoken frame.
It's highly symbolic, yeah. It was apparently quite a melancholy gathering, a quiet, reflective moment that allows the whole history to land with genuine emotional weight, far removed from the screaming crowds and the mania.
Right.
The members' recollections of that particular day would likely focus on the body language, maybe the forced smiles, the subtle tension in the air, and perhaps the unspoken awareness that they were standing there together, physically, for pretty much the last time as a functioning unit. It signals the end of an era with a kind of quiet sadness, rather than some spectacular final blow-up.
So, putting all these specific moments together, from Ringo's humble, slightly comical bus ride, to the quiet, complex farewell at John's house, and the intense technical brilliance documented during the making of Grap Pepper, the synthesis, is that this carefully curated collection of specific moments allows the book to successfully capture the true essence of the band's incredible story.
Absolutely. By choosing moments that are, as the source says, warm, frank, funny, poignant, and bold, the book isn't just reciting facts and dates. It's capturing the spirit, the humanity of the four individuals who created music that has, quite rightly, inspired generations. It allows you, the reader, the listener, to understand not just the timeline, but the full, messy, glorious reality of their history.
Well, thanks for joining us today. And remember, if you want to get some free Kindle books today, visit us at bookcheapskate.com, and you'll have all the links right there. But do it now. These books are free today, but we'll probably be back to full price tomorrow. Cass will do it again tomorrow.
I look forward to it.
This deep dive into the sources really reveals why the 25th anniversary edition of the Beatles Anthology stands out as such an important resource. Just to summarize the key takeaways for you listening, you're getting the definitive oral history, fully sanctioned by all surviving members and Yoko Ono Lennon, and crucially, including John's voice, painstakingly compiled from across his entire life.
And you are gaining access to just massive archival depth, over 1,300 images, so many previously unpublished, pulled directly from their personal collections. And importantly, its structure arranged chronologically by year, with each band member's perspective presented sequentially, makes this incredibly comprehensive history surprisingly accessible. It prevents that feeling of information overload by allowing you to immediately compare those sometimes conflicting memories.
It truly is a singular volume, isn't it? Giving us the full scope from those small Liverpool stages right up to global dominance, told by the people who actually lived it, supported by the people who managed it behind the scenes, and preserved by the people who loved them.
And the lasting relevance of the Beatles' history is just undeniable. This reissue allows that immediate access to their history directly from the source, minimizing any external mediation or interpretation. However, this is maybe where we have to consider the slightly bigger picture regarding historical documentation in general.
Go on, what do you mean?
Well, the original anthology project came together in the mid-90s. That was really a time of information scarcity, relatively speaking. Products were analog, access was limited.
Right.
This new 25th anniversary edition, though, it feels like a project of abundance and also of control. The source emphasizes this simultaneous global co-release. You get the definitive book, the high-definition Disney Plus series, and the restored, expanded music all hitting at once.
Okay.
So the provocative thought, perhaps, for you, the listener, to consider is this. Does having the definitive book, the perfect visual documentary, and the pristine audio, all simultaneously controlled and released by the originators. Does that raise new questions about the future of historical documentation and legacy management?
Mm.
Does this coordinated multimedia approach, 25 years after the original, fundamentally change how a cultural phenomenon like the Beatles is experienced and understood by a new generation? A generation who sees their history presented not maybe as a discovery to be pieced together, but as this fully synchronized, highly curated official experience?
That's a fascinating angle. The history is now presented as this interconnected, almost centrally controlled experience, rather than a series of disparate products that might require more active historical research or interpretation from the consumer. A very important distinction for the modern learner, the modern fan, to appreciate.
Indeed. It's something to think about.
Until then, keep on opening new worlds with great books without opening your wallet. And by reading, your mind becomes its own kingdom.